welcome to the morning show. We're coming to you today on WJOP-LP Newburyport at FM 96.3 on Channel 9, and we'll be available also on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube station at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and today I'm delighted to tell you that we're going to be learning about the important and impactful work of a Newburyport High School club, Bring Change to Mind. And we have the perfect people here today to tell us about it. We have Cassidy Balcome here. She's club president. Welcome, Cass.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all your kind words, too. We're really just trying to, break the stigma around mental health, and it's great to be here.
It's an important endeavor. We all need it. And I also have the Vice President, Kaylee Simons is here. Kaylee, welcome, and thanks for taking time to visit the show.
Of course, thank you for having us. I'm excited to talk about the profound impact BC2M has had on me.
Oh, wonderful. I look forward to that. And we're also honored to have the club counselor here, Newburyport High School's own Jaime Calisi. Jaime, thanks for taking time to be here.
Thank you so much for inviting us. This is very exciting for our club.
Well, I think your club sounds just great. Let's learn something about it. Please start us off then, if you would, by tell us the origin story of Bring Change to Mind, because it's a national organization. When was it started, by whom, and what was its mission?
So, Bring Change to Mind was started in 2010 by an actress, Glenn Close. It is a national organization, as you said, and then they have a bunch of school chapters in different schools all around the nation just working to end the stigma surrounding mental health. We also want to mention Sasha Layden. She was our previous president, and she was completely a driving force in bringing Bring Change to Mind into Newburyport High School. And now we've been able to build such a great school community off of it, and it's honestly just a privilege.
Oh, that's wonderful. You know, I have to tell you that I feel a connection to Glenn Close because she went to William & Mary, and I did also graduate from William & Mary. And so Glenn Close, before she was a Glenn Close, used to be in every theatrical production. So I got to see her act on stage before she was a big movie star. So I was excited when I went to the website and learned, oh, Glenn Close. It's not like she's my bestie, but we're fellow alums of William & Mary. So, tell us then about your chapter at Newburyport High School. Tell us about what you do locally at the school with Bring Change to Mind. What are the goals of your club?
Yeah, so I think our biggest thing is teaching others about mental health, and then breaking the stigma surrounding mental health in our school, in the community. One of the big things we've talked about this year is looking at the stigma that other people in our own, students have around mental health, but then also looking at the stigma that teachers hold. And when we were looking at that, we've definitely seen that there's a greater stigma with the teachers than there is with the students. Because I think students at the school are really receptive to saying, okay, maybe this person lives with anxiety or depression. But then teachers, it's a completely different generation that may not have grown up with the same understanding of it. So we really want to normalize it across generations and develop a greater understanding in the school system.
That's so important. And we were talking a little bit before the show about generational differences. We grow up with one set of terms and vocabularies that we get used to. We don't mean to be offending anybody or not showing support and compassion. But younger generations have a lot to teach older generations because the understanding and the, sort of getting that language matters. It communicates at different levels. So we have a lot to learn from you all. So thank you for that. That's really important. I'm curious to find out what got each of you interested in participating in Bring Change to Mind, whichever one of you would like to start.
So really ever since I was young, mental health has been a very open conversation in my household. A lot of my family members have had their own struggles, and myself as well, so it's kind of just if we're all as a society kind of suffering these different, not suffering, but suffering these different mental illnesses, why not have an active role in kind of fighting the stigma surrounding those mental health illnesses?
Absolutely, yeah. So it comes to you by virtue of what you learned in your family growing up.
Absolutely.
There was an openness.
Absolutely.
About
My parents are
things.
so open about talking about mental health, and I think everybody should be.
Yeah.
We're all in this together, and there's really no reason we can't have a conversation about it together.
Cassidy, your family's philosophy is such a good fit
Yeah.
with Bring Change to Mind.
It is.
Isn't that surprising then that you found a home for some of those values and Bring Change to Mind? Thank you for describing that. How about you, Katie?
So to start, I really want to tell you about how I came to Bring Change to Mind. I transferred into Newburyport High School my sophomore year. I first went to Austin Prep as a freshman. It was really far from home. It wasn't a great fit, so I wanted to come to Newburyport my sophomore year.
Yeah.
But the thing is, my parents live in Haverhill. It's our family house. We've grown up, but my entire life has been in Newburyport. We always joke that we sleep in Haverhill but live in Newburyport.
Well, that's a good deal.
Yeah. So in order to come to Newburyport my sophomore year, I moved in with my grandparents in Newburyport.
Oh.
And so that was really hard for me. I go from family dinners every night to getting to see my parents maybe 3 times a week on the weekends. So that was really difficult for me, and I
Yeah.
was learning how to live like separated from my parents when I hadn't
Yeah.
before. And so I had so much anxiety. I had no clue what was going on in my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life at the time. And I just felt torn. I didn't see my friends from Austin Prep. It was so hard to fit into the new social cliques of Newburyport. And I just felt kind of lost, to be honest. It was awful. And so junior year, everything kind of came to a head. It was a really big struggle for me. But then I really started to find my way when I came to BC2M, and it started to kind of normalize mental health. And then BC2M gave me the confidence to really immerse myself in the community at Newburyport. And so I'm on the track and field team and a million other different clubs that really made me feel more at home in Newburyport. And so then this past year, I've kind of been a driving force for mental health in my family. And my younger brother, who has a special place in my heart, was diagnosed with autism and depression, which was a surprise, but at the same time not a huge surprise in my family. But I feel like I've really been able to kind of help my parents navigate this new reality, which has been amazing and has really brought me closer to everyone in my family. And so I think it's just a really great opportunity that I've had within my family, and now also to share my story about how mental health impacts a lot more people than you think it might.
I think it impacts everybody. And thank you for that story and for sharing your personal story. And I understand that sounds like that's a difficult change. Lots of changes happening all at once for you. But obviously you had the resilience to make it through. And some of that resilience means that, as you were focusing, you had to be able to talk about things.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to talk about it. Because if you can't talk about it, it gets suppressed
It
to
just
dark
gets all bottled up.
Dungeons and
Yeah.
Dragons.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you both for those stories. Well, let's talk about some of the work then that your club does, some of the projects and events you've been sponsoring. I read about in the Daily News your endeavor to bring therapy dogs to the high school during exam prep. And I have a therapy dog of my own, so I know how soothing and calming they can be. First of all, tell us, how did it work out? How did people respond to having your therapy dogs there during exam prep week?
Therapy dogs is always kind of one of our most popular events.
I am not surprised.
Yeah. So
Teachers and kids.
yeah, for teachers and kids, everyone definitely loves that one. So people responded very well to that. But then in addition to therapy dogs, we host an annual football game, and that is kind of our biggest fundraiser for the year. It's great to just get everyone together. We're privileged with a pretty good school climate of like just overall camaraderie, so to get everybody together all in one, like everyone wears purple, we do face painting, we do a ton of different things, and it's just honestly amazing to be able to do that for everybody. And then we also attend some mental health fairs, so we have for the past I think 2 years, and then we're going this year to Salem, New Hampshire's mental health fair. So we go, and just kids from their school come and they visit, and it's great to just be able to foster a healthy communication about mental health.
And I have to proudly say our table is always one of the most visited tables. We do games, we have little prizes, and it's all the kids go through the cafeteria at through their lunchtime. They can take a walk through, and there's tons of vendors, but our table is always packed, and it's a very busy day for these guys promoting and explaining mental health and having them do, we do a Jeopardy game around mental health, so it's really fun.
And and I was gonna say I'm also fortunate to be on the mayor's mental health task force as the student liaison,
great.
and so through that I've brought some members of the club to a suicide prevention training earlier in the year, and then we're also hoping to do a little task force and BC2M collab this spring with some big event in the spring that we haven't really planned down yet, but we're excited for.
Well, but what I take from what you're saying is you do a lot of outreach, and that's really important to spread the word, and you do it in a way that is uplifting.
Definitely.
That draws people in and makes them feel like, yeah, we can do this, we can learn about, we can talk about these things, whereas, you know, in the past there's been, well, it's what you're fighting, the stigma around it, the sense that somehow there's a, you know, something unspeakable or nervous-making about it. So it sounds as though you're very much normalizing talking about mental health and treating it as something everybody can be, perhaps should be interested in. And so, well done, bravo.
Thank you.
Well, but we all know that there is a mental health crisis. The phrase gets used a lot, and among everybody, but also particularly we've seen the statistics about youth challenges with anxiety and depression. And I found some statistics on the Bring Change to Mind website that were striking to me. 3/4 of mental health disorders start before the age of 24, so the work you're doing with young people is really important, urgent really. 72% of students report having a mental health crisis, and only, this is a sad one, only 40% of students experiencing mental health concerns seek care, and that's where I think you have the potential to really make a difference. We will, as I said, you know, we read about the prevalence of anxiety and depression, so I'm curious, what do you see and what do your friends and fellow students tell you as the drivers among such high levels of stress among people your age?
At Newburyport High School in particular, it's an extremely competitive high school, not just from sports but also academically. And I think a lot of that pressure and stress and anxiety stems from comparing yourself to everybody else at the high school. And so, if you're constantly in competition to compare yourself, like to get the best grades possible, yes, that could have its pluses because, okay, you're determined to get good grades. But at the same time, when you're constantly comparing yourself to someone else, you lose sight of who you are.
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of the anxiety comes in.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, normalizing that, okay, you don't have to be the top of the class, but you also, like, you can put in the effort, then that's where you'll start to feel better and you start to lose some of the anxiety that builds up when you're in high school.
Yeah. You know, I had a friend once who coined the phrase, I think it makes sense, that comparing yourself to other people is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely.
And I think what you're saying, grounds that in the felt experience of so many people. It also makes me think about, I can't think of her name, maybe Jaime, you'll know, the woman who wrote the book about self-compassion is more important than self-esteem. Because I think sometimes it feels like you talk about, self-esteem is not a zero-sum game. Although when we're very competitive with other people, it feels like it's a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
If you get into an ivy and I don't, then you get points and I lost points. But self-compassion is really the source of happiness, and it's a much healthier goal for us all to cultivate. And so focus on who you are and have compassion for yourself. And that is the path to happiness in life, whereas self-comparison, as my friend said, is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
So anyway, Cassidy, did you have any insights you wanted to add?
Absolutely, I agree with a lot of what Kaylee said. We honestly, Newburyport High School is a very competitive academic environment. So around this time of year, with college admissions happening, and then when SATs come around, and then like everyone is very focused on their GPA, their sports, it's a stressful environment to be in, but I feel like we've done a good job at kind of being able to provide students a break in their day in order to bring that down. But comparison is quite literally the thief of joy, and we just try and teach everybody that it's okay to slow down sometimes. And we live in a very fast-paced society, so I feel like a lot of our students find themselves like constantly trying to fulfill some roles. But I'm in a psychology class right now, and something we talked a lot about was positive psychology.
Yes.
and I think that's something great that we might be interested in kind of educating our students about.
Yeah, in fact, I just remembered the name Kristen Neff, N-E-F-F, is the author of the book about self-compassion, and I used to study positive psychology, and she was one, that's where I found her book.
One of the things that I always tell everyone in my classroom as well as students is be your own best friend. Right? Don't say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to your best friend. And I think once we start thinking about that and how hard, because what I see with these kids is so much of it, it's internal. It's not their parents putting pressure, it's not their teachers. They're doing it to themselves. So kind of saying, if I wouldn't say that to Cass about what she's doing, don't say it to yourself. And that's really a good line to kind of
that sounds like very wise advice. We just have to remember that all day long.
Absolutely.
Be your own best friend.
Yep.
Well, thank you for that. I know that I'm curious about, we also hear so much about social media. And I wanted to ask you both, do you see social media playing a role in the kind of accelerated stress that people your age feel?
100%. I think social media is kind of like a silent killer to an extent, because you hear about it all the time. You hear social media is bad for you, but when you look at your own life, I think a lot of people struggle to see how it's harmful to them personally. But I also think in like the silent aspect, I think that it opens the door for so many comparisons that you don't even realize you're making at the time. And so you start holding yourself to a higher standard and you don't even realize it. So that's why.
That's a powerful phrase, social media is the silent killer. I think Jonathan Haidt, who wrote the Anxious Generation book, would like that. So, Cassidy, what were you going to say?
I think it depends a lot on kind of the content that you consume. It's very easy to fall into the trap of like, oh, all these people are doing this with their lives and I'm not. But there are some great creators out there that have a similar mission to us, and if you're consuming that content or if you're consuming positive content, I think it can have some really great uses in society. However, the thing with our generation is we kind of grew up with it in our hands, and it was really hard to learn how to navigate like all the different ins and outs of social media. So it's definitely having an impact on our generation's mental health.
And as you're talking about that, Cass, it also occurs to me that your generation is kind of the leading generation of exposure to social media, and older generations haven't always been able to offer the inside knowledge of what's going on in order to create those guidelines. So you have to kind of be the pioneering generation of consumers and also the pioneering generation of figuring out what's wise, what's not wise, what to avoid, and what are some guidelines that people can use in order to sort through. Like Jaime, building upon your, never say something to yourself that you wouldn't say to a good friend.
Right.
If your social media account is telling you something that a good friend would not say to you, or that you wouldn't say to your own good friend, then it's probably not the best account to be following. Make sense? So,
I've noticed too that a lot as I'm over the past 4 years at the high school, and then I also have a therapy practice. This generation is actually setting limits for themselves. They're realizing the damage, and so they're putting timers. And the generation, I think, a little bit before, it was still really exciting and everything, and they fell more down the negative spiral. But I see these kids, and especially as they head towards college, realizing the damaging effects and how much their brain is being put into these algorithms, and that they're doing more studies and themselves. It's a lot more impactful than if it's us telling them.
Absolutely, because it's self-generated.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, all of you. That's really interesting. I know that one of the primary challenges that Bring Change to Mind hopes to bring about is, as you were talking about before, to just diminish the stigma surrounding mental illness. A stigma and a judgment or bias that we would never apply to physical illnesses is something that people often unthinkingly will apply to mental health challenges. So I wanted to ask each of you, because you've been working with the club for a while now, why do you think that getting rid of the stigma around mental illness is really urgent for us as a community, as a society?
Personally, for me, something that kind of strikes me is suicide rates. They're absolutely, it's almost exponentially that they're increasing. So I feel like if we can, as a society all together, like outside of just Newburyport High School, sit down and be like, it's okay not to be okay. That's one of my favorite kind of things. It's okay not to be okay. I feel like we all kind of have a responsibility in this mental health crisis, and I feel like why not break the stigma?
Absolutely.
And you talked about how, like, the stigma's something that we would never apply to a physical illness like cancer.
Yeah.
But the thing is, with mental health, you can't see it, and so you don't know who's going through. Like, it could be your best friend, it could be your younger brother, and you would have absolutely no idea. And so I think you really just have to start being more receptive and understanding as individuals, and develop that understanding that it could be anyone, and you would have absolutely no idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And anyone, anywhere, anytime. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, how much stigma do you currently perceive, like at the high school, and how does it show up?
Honestly, I feel like we've done a really good job at kind of breaking the stigma
for
around
you.
mental health. Not to kind of like toot our own horn or anything, but during the school day, you don't see it discussed as much just because we are kind of consumed in our classes, but there's so many great resources at Newburyport High School. Our guidance department does great, and I feel like we're very open about talking about, like, oh, this is stressing me out, and people will be there for you. Our teachers are there for you. I
think also this club has really helped because we have 67 members on our classroom right now, which is a huge number, and it's always growing. And just people seeing who's on the classroom is really important to realize, oh, I didn't know so-and-so is interested in mental health, or seeing Kaylee, who everyone is like, wow, she's so put together, would never realize having struggles because her presentation every day, you can't see it from the outside.
Yeah.
And then having, knowing that I'm the advisor, I think allows a gateway too, because kids that might not seek out help can then get to know me, and then I can kind of direct them to the right resources.
Right.
Which helps because they might not want to go to guidance.
But you're making it comfortable for people, and safe for people, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I know that from reading through Bring Change to Mind nationally also has a wonderful website. It has so many resources on it. And I know that one of their central points, and one of yours, is the language that we use is critical to the framework that we use for viewing people who are living with some kind of mental health challenge. And of course, it's also critical how we view our own challenges, whatever emotional or cognitive challenges that we're dealing with. So what are some of the words that you would most like us to understand? We need to get rid of that vocabulary word. So your own list of what do you want to target, say, no, that's, we're gonna wipe out that term because it's harmful. Are there particular ones you want us to target in terms of derogatory? I can provide some.
I mean, the first one that comes to my mind is, like, when you see someone that obviously has some type of disability and they're like, oh, he's special. Like, that one, that one just doesn't sit well with me, personally.
I feel like that is kind of one word that we hear a lot at our schools, like, oh, he's special. And it's like, and it's...
Because you know what people mean by special. There's quotation marks around it. It's
the context around it is degrading.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then just overall, like, psycho, lunatic. Like, there's no reason we should be using this language anymore. I feel like we've come so far, and it's just, there's no reason we should be using this language.
That's interesting. I wonder, for a long time in educational institutions, special needs was the way that education for special people was. And so I'm guessing, I bet that also contributed to the way people use that word.
Definitely.
And it has then devolved into something that is a euphemism for not as nice words that people are really thinking in their minds. So thank you for that. That's really interesting. Well, I found a list of phrases that any of us might make because we just haven't thought through the downside of those phrases like special, or special, as you were saying. And we may not have empathically tried to understand the impact that they have on other people. So we might not even have thought of better ways of phrasing something. And I found a very interesting list on the website again, and I wanted to pose these phrases to you because I know that you'll have more compassionate, more empathic, and just wiser and more helpful, above all, ways of phrasing the same thing. So, ready?
Yes.
Let me just find my sheet here that had them. Okay, so here's an example. Somebody might say, thinking it was just a regular thing today, she suffers from schizophrenia. Is there a better way of saying that? Or not better, I want to say just more useful, more helpful.
She lives with mental illness.
Yeah. There's a power in that, to talk about somebody living with mental illness. It's interesting to me because I'm fascinated by language. To say that somebody is living with something, it sort of creates a much broader community, doesn't it? In
It
which that
absolutely
person
does.
is living as a human being who is struggling with something. And you probably cannot find a human being on the face of the planet who is not currently living with something they're struggling with. That's safe to say. So sounds like a subtle shift, but it's not. So
I think it provides more strength-based, right? Rather than suffering, like living, like just surviving strength.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's what I feel when you
Yeah.
say those out loud to me.
yeah, absolutely. There's power, and sometimes in the simplest changes can be the most profound. So thank you for that. Okay, another example is, oh, that's so crazy.
That's so surprising.
Okay.
Or even thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling me
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, because sometimes we might say, well, that's so crazy, and we're not intending to be insulting to anybody, but what we really mean is, that's so surprising. It really is.
Yeah.
There's something that's baffling about it, or I don't understand that. Or so, of course, if you say, I don't understand it, it makes you the one who's owning the response rather than putting on the other person. All right, you'll get over it eventually. Just cheer up.
I'm here to listen if you want to talk about it.
There are few things that I dislike more than somebody telling me, smile. And this one,
I
you'll
agree.
get over it, cheer up, is in the same line.
Yeah.
And so, say that again, Kaylee. This is what you can say instead. Would you repeat it?
I'm here to listen if you want to talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which changes the emotional dynamic 1,000%, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. We probably all heard this one too. Oh, it can't be that bad.
I believe you.
There you go.
Yeah.
I feel like validating someone's emotions is so important.
Yeah.
100%. This one in particular, if somebody's taking the time to tell you about what they live through and what they go through, the worst thing you can do is say, it's crazy or it can't be that bad.
Yeah.
But when you validate them and say that, I understand, or I might not even understand, but I'm here to listen, and if you don't make them sound crazy, then it's
Yeah.
forming a deeper connection between you two, and it builds trust and relationship.
Absolutely. It's an invitation for somebody to share what's going on, and to feel validated, as they do it. Whereas I think when somebody says it can't be that bad, they're saying, don't bother me, I can't cope. Which is going to shut somebody up. And everything we've been talking is about how important it is to have conversations about difficult things. And as the listener, to have the resilience to be able to tolerate and find a constructive way, because you'll strengthen yourself and your own kind of, it's gratifying to be able to do that, to feel yourself as a useful human being, as a helpful human being. Okay, he's bipolar.
He lives with bipolar disorder.
Very much. I mean, you might think that that's just neutral, you're just describing somebody, and yet what it's missing is, as we were saying before, this is a human being who is living with something. It's not somebody who is being labeled and compartmentalized then as separate from and different from everybody else. Just get over it already.
Would you be willing to tell me more about what you're going through?
Okay. Again, there's that invitation to open up. Now, here's one many of us may have heard. Stop being lazy.
Anything amongst lines of like, how can I make this easier for you? How can I help you? I feel like offering a helping hand is always appreciated.
Right. Are there others that you've heard? Those were the examples that I found on the website, and I thought, oh yeah, these are good ones to use. Are there other things that you've heard yourself from other people or overheard that you'd like to sort of suggest to people, there's a better way to do that?
I think a common one was like, okay, you'll be fine. It's all going to work out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure it will work out eventually, but right now it feels like it's not going to, and I need some help. I think that one.
Yeah, or I feel like something that we talked about earlier was the big like generational difference that we experienced. So I feel like saying things like, "Oh, just toughen up."
Oh
it's
yeah,
just not.
Don't be a snowflake.
Yeah.
Which is a way of shutting somebody down.
It absolutely is.
And part of what's implicit in everything you've been saying is that we all are having busy inner experiences. We're all living with something. If somebody shuts down, they're going to feel as though this is unspeakable. And come to the assumption, I think, that, well, there must be something wrong with me if I'm experiencing something that is so awful that it's unspeakable. And that's the exact opposite of the goal of bring change to mind and of the impact that we all hope is the kind of person we want to be, which is kind and helpful. Other ones?
One that I hear more among the adults, again, the teachers, are someone saying that someone's so unmotivated.
Oh, yeah,
And
that's
goes
kind of
along
like
with that lazy.
a multisyllabic way of saying lazy.
Right, and I think it's always important to remember people do what they can.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that nobody wants to be labeled lazy or unmotivated.
No.
So if that's happening, it's dig a little bit deeper. There's probably more
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah, if somebody's energy is blocked, there's a reason for it.
Right.
And you're not going to get to the reason by labeling somebody as
Right.
lazy or unmotivated. So, anything else? We've given a good tour of phrases to substitute, I think. Well, I was curious to find out then, what have each of you learned or been most impacted by that you'll carry with you from the work that you've been doing as leaders of Bring Change to Mind?
I feel like overall, just the leadership skills that I've been able to gain. I've only been president for 1 year, so it's definitely something that we're like growing and navigating with. But overall, just like the leadership skills, it's honestly a privilege to be able to talk about something so important and so stigmatized and just help this, like we said, mental health crisis. So I feel like my leadership skills and just being able to bring this with me wherever I go.
Absolutely, yeah. A legacy for a lifetime, in other words, because those skills will, I'm sure that they'll be useful in, well, pretty much everything that you wind up doing later on. How about you, Katie?
For me personally, I used to think of a leader as somebody as like this big, strong, tough guy that tells these people what to do and always knows what to do in a sense. But this club and then everything else I've been a part of, and my dad of all people, he's my biggest inspiration. But everything has taught me how to be more empathetic and understanding leader, because you can't be a successful leader without understanding who you're leading.
Yeah, and I don't think people think of leadership with that in mind.
Definitely not. I didn't at first.
Yeah, that's not really interesting. Yeah, so you both have had very important kinds of impacts from the work that you've done. Well, how can the community, how can other people, how can we be supportive of Bring Change to Mind and your mission?
Well, I won't be here next year, but I did want to pose the question: where would you like to see us? Where does the community want to see us? Is there events that we should go to or you'd like us to be involved in and have a student presence? Because I feel like we've made such a profound impact at the high school, but reaching out to the community would be the next big step for us.
Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Where do you want to see us? Like, we are so willing to work with literally anybody and everybody. Yeah.
Definitely.
Invitation heard. I think that's great. So you're ready and willing to go and do outreach, and the invitation is out
100%.
there to communities, organizations within the greater Newburyport community to reach out to you. Bravo. Hopefully
also
this show will spread the word then.
We've been very lucky. I do want to say the community of Newburyport, the businesses, before the football game, the girls went downtown and went business to business asking, just because we wanted to put together a gift basket to do a raffle for, and people gave amazing, wonderful things that were unexpected once they heard what our mission is and what we do. So it's a very amazing community that we're proud to be a part of.
Yeah.
And maybe we can get some more connected relationships for more people for you to connect with, and kind of like spread the really important word. Let's talk, basically.
Yes.
And let's talk and understand one another. And I've mentioned it before. I want to end with the Bring Change to Mind website. .org. It's not hard to find, and it really does have so many resources on it. So I recommend it to anybody and everybody.
Yes.
And finally, thank you all so much. Thank you, first of
Thank
all,
you.
for taking time to visit the morning show, and even more importantly, thank you all for the work you're doing for bringing health and understanding and empathy through Bring Change to Mind to our shared community. I really appreciate the important and impactful work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate the community who's willing to listen.
Yes.
Well, absolutely. And you have important things that are worth listening to, for sure. So that's it for today, everybody. Please join us again next Thursday at 9 for the morning show. Until then, everybody, please be well.